fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh. You guys are my buds. I have a bud on the line. Nice special guest today. We got Drew Cordell. How you doing, Drew?
Hey Tom, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you on. And yeah, we're gonna get into some Oldhim talk. But before we even get there, I want to get a little feel for you and let the listener get a feel for you as well. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you come from, etc.
For sure. Yeah, I've been playing Flesh and Blood now since April, and before that, I was a legend player and coach in Hearthstone, and have been playing Magic the Gathering on fairly competitive levels for a decade. So, I got into this. I actually saw Noxious on YouTube had some content for Flesh and Blood. It caught my eye. Started learning more about the game, and then when I actually played it, I was hooked. And since then, I've really gone into the competitive side of things and have started writing for both Wraith Times and Channel Fireball on strategy. Really got into the deck building side of things, and as a control player in Magic primarily, really gravitated toward Guardian from the start, and it's really been kind of my area of expertise in this game.
Yeah, definitely. And if for anybody who hasn't checked out any of Drew's articles on either the Wraith Times or CFB, they are definitely worth the read. Very informative, and you have content that extends beyond Guardian. And I recently just read the one that you just wrote about the different attack values.
Uh,
What was that? I forget what the article was called. I'm blanking right now. Um, uh, do you?
Yeah, that was the modified Beatty sequence. It's a irrational base. It's a mathematical model, but it's one we really commonly find in Flesh and Blood, and it really plays into the concept of breakpoints, which, for anyone not familiar, that's the incremental increase of stats on cards that really push it to the next level. Most of the cards in Flesh and Blood, if you have a class card, they're going to defend for 3. So when you have an attack that goes in for, say, 4, that's either going to take one card out of your opponent's hand and you're going to push a damage through after that, or they're going to have to defend with 2. So it's all about those kind of weird numbers that you can present to opponents that make their life a little bit more difficult when they decide how they want to block and plan out their next turn.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and I definitely recommend anybody who's just getting into the combat side of things in Flesh and Blood to check out that article, and I'll link that in the show notes. It was interesting reading that article. I have a Levia deck built here, and I'm like, oh man, because outside of Command and Conquer, you don't really mention 6 power attacks. So I'm like, oh, that's my whole deck. What's going on? But
No,
that's
you're good. And really, the reason behind that is 6 power attacks. They typically represent you're taking 2 cards from your opponent's hand, and that's always good. Make no mistake. It's a perfectly valid strategy to just present as much damage as you can, and that's kind of brute specialty. I've played Levia quite a bit in Blitz, and just coming in with the various go again packages in that deck, swinging for 6, 2, 3 times a turn is very powerful.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've been really impressed with her, and I actually like her quite a bit in this new meta, and I've talked about it in previous episodes. But before we get into some more Flesh and Blood, are you're an author, Drew?
Yes, I am. So I write science fiction and then lit RPG as well on the side, and that's this plus all the Flesh and Blood stuff. That's all on top of the day job.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you sound like a busy guy. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'll have to check out some of your writing. I'm excited to do that. But so you're from the Dallas area. Will you be attending the Dallas Fort Worth calling that we got coming up this month?
Yes, I will. I'm playing in the main event, and depending on that how that goes, I'll be playing in day 2 or attempting either some drafts or side events on the side or the pro quest on the Sunday there.
Oh,
Very
nice. There's a
excited
pro
for that.
quest. Yeah. The Las Vegas one was obviously a huge hit. I'm hoping for Dallas and Cincinnati to be just as big of a hit this month.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you started you played Magic. I also come from the Magic side of things, and then you got into Hearthstone a little bit. Now, what really made you kind of make this jump into Flesh and Blood? What sparked that interest outside of Noxious? Seeing his content. Uh, when you sat down with the cards, what was the thing that really jumped out at you?
It was really the fact that when you sit down for a game of Flesh and Blood, it's nonstop action from the start. You start with a pool of resources, all your armor and equipment. You start fresh and ready to go, and then over time, that gets worn down. It's messy, but it's just nonstop action and just the mechanics of your cards doing anything that you basically need to at any given time. It just opens up so many different lines of play and strategy. So no matter if you're attacking, you're defending, or just planning your turn, there's always stuff to be thinking about. There's always something happening, and it's just really that mechanic of deciding what to do with your cards at any given point, trying to find that best line of play given the scenario of the game. It really hooked me from the start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel the exact same way. It felt like, not that in other games decisions don't matter all the time, but like, yeah, I'll give an example. I played a sealed game last night I'm in a Creators of Aria sealed tournament, and I made a decision in the first turn of the game that looking back, I watched the video again. I'm like, that cost me the whole game. It was just I rolled the dice a little bit. I was hoping to draw off the top something a little bit better, but it doesn't always pan out that way. But if I had made the correct decision, I think I would have won the game. And that really jumps out at me for Flesh and Blood, is that it's just, man, these decisions are so very important, because it's always about the optimal play. There's very little room for mistakes, I think, in my opinion anyway.
Definitely. That's a huge element, and I've had that lesson myself in so many games over time, where there's usually a safe choice that's, hey, I'm going to do this, it's going to happen this way, or there's that a little bit more risky, probably has more upside, but it's always kind of difficult to evaluate whether you want to put a little bit of chance on maybe leaning into that RNG or the variance of the game, or just go for the safe play that you know is going to pan out at least somewhat beneficial for you.
Yeah, definitely. And to a certain extent, I am a bit of a gambler. So I'm looking at these scab skin leathers next to my desk here. I do like to roll the dice. There's no mistake about that. But yeah. But when it comes to the heart of the cards, as it is, maybe I should chill out a little bit in my gameplay. But yeah, man. So usually every episode, I like to do a crack a pack. I have a nice first edition Tales of Aria pack right here, and I'll crack it open, and we'll go through each card, and we'll do it pretty briefly, but just give you a quick your thoughts on them.
Sounds great. Good
Yeah.
luck on the pack.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these came from a box that I've already got the legendary, which obviously I should be happy about anyway, but we will see what we crack here. So, here's a card that I do like. This is Autumn's Touch Blue. So that's the one that hits for 5 with 3 defense. I like the Autumn Touch in general in this set.
Oh, for sure. And it's the block 3 there really can't be underestimated. That's something that's very scarce in the set outside of your class cards, and this is a card that I would certainly consider in blue and red. If you're playing Briar, for instance, you just need that one power attack where if you have an off turn, you can't do something with Rosetta Thorn or maybe any of the Go Again, or pushing some arcane damage. It's perfectly valid just to pitch a blue and then throw the red version of that card across the table for 7.
Oh, absolutely, and definitely if I'm opening Autumn's Touch blue, I mean anything blue, if I'm in Oldhim already, I'm kind of already getting excited.
Yeah, for sure.
Next we have the blue Shock Striker, which is the lightning attack. The blue one has 3 attack, 2 defense, and this is the one that has 1 per turn instant, 2 resources. It gains if it hits a hero, deal 1 damage to them.
Yeah, certainly not a card I'd be super excited about, but if you're a little low on resource generation for, say, Lexi or Briar here, that you might want to consider that just for the blue pitch alone, or if you need some additional fuse targets for your lightning cards.
Absolutely. Here's another card I actually have liked quite a bit is Icy Encounter. This is the yellow one. And for those who don't know, if Icy Encounter hits a hero, create a Frostbite token under the control. The yellow hits for 5 and has 2 defense.
Yeah, this is a card that I like a lot. I tend to look for the red version there as it pushes up to 6.
Mm-hmm.
In this format with so few block 3 cards, this is typically going to represent 3 cards from your opponent's hand if they don't want to take damage. And just the frostbite tokens in general are very powerful and limited. If you can stack them or threaten them in a way when your opponent's low life that they're going to have to block out your attack and then potentially still get that while also ruining their next turn.
Absolutely. I mean, when you sit there facing one of these attacks, these icy encounters, and you're looking at your hand and you're like, well, I could take it and get that frostbite token, and I can't really play my hand out the way I want to anyway, so I might as well try to block it. So it definitely presents like some really tough decisions for your opponent, which I love. Next, we have Rejuvenate Yellow. This is the elemental non-attack action, defense for 2. It says gain 2 life. If you have fused this turn, you may play it as though you were an instant. It is an instant.
This is unfortunately, in my eyes, one of the 3 worst cards in the set. And really, the only situation I would consider running this is if I was really light on non-attack actions, playing as Briar and Sealed, and I was going up against a mirror match. I'd potentially slot this in as a sideboard card just as it helps you recover from a little bit of that arcane damage. But this is, in almost all instances, not a card that I want in my limited deck ever.
I agree. I'm not. I have not been impressed by the card, but no, on to the next one. Here's a emerging avalanche red. Now this is an elemental guardian action, which relevant for later in the conversation. But ice fusion, go again. It's an aura. When it enters the arena, if it was fused, create a frostbite token under target hero's control. Beginning of your action phase, destroy it. The next attack action card you play this turn gains +3, and it defends for 3.
Yeah, this is kind of what I would put as a kind of a mid-tier Oldhim card in limited. It has a lot of upside. If you get the fuse off and put that frostbite, then as long as you can attack your next turn, this is going to be a really strong option just for pushing damage. The trick is, yeah, your opponent is going to see that coming. They're going to see this big attack telegraphed, and they're going to throw everything they can at you to stop you from getting this buff here. That usually means if they have equipment remaining, they're going to pop all of that, really just try to make your life miserable the next turn so you lose the benefit of this card.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you really want to fuse this card, right? You want to get that frostbite token to make it hard for them to do that to you on the swing back.
Certainly. And this is one that, sorry.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, this is one that typically, if I'm playing this, I want to be swinging back on top of it in some way just to potentially take a card from my opponent's hand. So usually that's just a Titan's Fist, but if you do have a 4-card hand that you're swinging with, then maybe there's a 2 or 3 cost attack that you can put on top of this one.
Oh, definitely. We got our first rare. This is Rites of Lightning. Red, which attacks for 4, defense for 3. It's elemental Runeblade attack action. Has lightning fusion when you attack with Rites of Lightning. If it was fused, deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. If you've dealt arcane damage this turn, Rites of Lightning gains go again.
Yeah, this one has been extremely strong in all of my testing, and it's really a card that you're going to get value with almost every single time. And even just pairing this with another common in the set, Bramble Spark, without a fuse target for either, you're going to guarantee that hit of arcane damage there. And that's a 0 cost non-attack action. That's basically, if you fuse it, your next attack is going to get +X, either 1, 2, or 3, depending on the color pitch. And then it's also, even if you don't fuse it, going to deal 1 arcane when you attack with a attack action card. So just pairing these two together, which is pretty easy to set up, you're going to have both your non-attack action, your attack action. You're going to give that Rites of Lightning go again, and then you're going to have the resources to swing in with the Rosetta Thorn for 2 arcane and 2 physical right after it. It's just a very powerful setup that's easy to pull off.
Oh yeah, and I guess if you're opening this, are you immediately thinking, all right, I think Briar in a draft, you're thinking, if I pick this, I want to try to sneak into Briar as best I can.
I would certainly consider that as a early pick in draft. One of the things about the draft format so far, at least in my testing, you kind of got this mini game, in that you have to decide if the person next to you is they're planning on playing Briar, or if they're
Mm-hmm.
going something else. Because there may be value in trying to pick either Lexi or Oldhim, which I think they're both much stronger in draft than they are in sealed.
Mm-hmm.
Just given what we know about the format so far.
Absolutely. Next we have another rare. We didn't get no majestic, unfortunately, but Weave Lightning Blue. It's a lightning non-attack action, defends for 2, cost 0. The next lightning or elemental attack action card you play this turn gains +1. If it was fused, it gains go again. And this has go again.
Yep, certainly a card I would be happy to include in my deck. I think this one is going to lend more value to Briar, in that if you put this in your arsenal as Lexi, you're going to have an attack that's not narrow in your hand unless you manage to draft or open a Voltaire.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're not going to be able to really take advantage of that go again by flipping it. Whereas in Briar, you're just going to be able to play your attack. If you have a Ball Lightning or something with go again, then you're turning on your Rosetta Thorn. And that's really what you want to be trying to do in sealed, at least.
Yeah, definitely. That Rosetta Thorn hits pretty hard. Yeah, no, I like Weave Lightning in Briar as well. We have our foil, which is a really cool looking foil. This is Rites of Replenishment, the blue one. It's cost 2. It's a 4 attack, 3 defense, elemental rune blade attack action. Has Earth Fusion. When you attack with Rites of Replenishment, if you have dealt arcane damage this turn, you may put a non-attack action card from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. And also, if it was fused, you may put an attack action card from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting card, and then it's a little bit more difficult to set up the payout, right? Because you've got the 2 criteria there. You need to have dealt arcane damage, and you also need to have that fused target. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, at least, this has been one where if I'm a little light on class cards, I would consider including this. But I've been having a hard time just getting that the payoff there and the value from this card. So it's a little bit lower priority for me.
Yeah, definitely. I found the same. It snuck into my Briar deck in my sealed pool, and just because it hit a little hard. I had the red one, which hits for 6, I believe, and but it is very hard to fire on all cylinders, as it were. So yeah, no, I agree 100%. Next we have the equipment. Sutcliffe's Suede Hides, which is the Runeblade legs. Has an attack reaction. You can pay a resource to destroy it. Target attack action card gains go again. Activate this ability only if you've played a non-attack action card this turn.
Yeah, this is a very strong card. It really does a Snapdragon Scalers impression
Mm-hmm.
in the traditional Runeblade fashion, where it cares about those non-attack actions as well as your attacks there. But this one, just having this equipment there, I think it's almost always going to be the correct choice to prioritize this over something like Runaways if you're playing as Briar, because really what it's going to do at the opportune time, whenever you have the cards you need for it, or you really want to just put on some more pressure on your opponent, it's going to almost guarantee that even without a go again attack, you're going to be able to trigger that Rosetta Thorn on that attack round.
Absolutely. And now if you open this, let's say this pack up till now in draft, would you jump on these hides because equipment's so scarce?
I would certainly consider the Suede Hides as an early pick. I don't know if I would personally try to go for the Rights of Lightning or maybe one of those generics, but I usually like to, at least in the first pack, keep my options open.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe look for some rares in the shared elements where I can go into any class pick, but I know there's certainly some merit in trying to lock into that class pick early on as
Definitely,
well.
definitely. Well, next we're into the class cards. We got a heavy hitter here. This is the Blue Glacial Footsteps, which is the 6 cost Elemental Guardian attack action, 8 attack, 3 defense. Has Ice Fusion, and if it was fused, it gains Dominate.
Yeah, this is just a fantastic Oldhim card, and even in constructed, it's one that I'm happy to send across the table, even as a blue. Just the fact that this is it's presenting an attack that can potentially close out the game. It blocks for 3, generates 3 resources. It does everything we want it to as a guardian.
Oh yeah, and I love that early game, at least in sealed, or even in constructed. In early game, it's paying you're pitching it to pay for your setup stuff, and then at the end of the game, when you start to cycle through your deck, it's gonna just close it all out. Um,
Absolutely.
Next, we have Entangle, which is another Guardian attack action. The blue one costs 3, 5 attack, 3 defense. Has Earth Fusion. If it was fused, it gains. If this hits a hero, their first attack during their next turn has a -2 attack.
Yeah, a very strong card, and this is really one that I kind of wrote off early into the format before actually getting to play as Oldhim. I found that this is especially relevant. It's easy to fuse, and just with the breakpoints in the set, it's a card you can really get a lot of value of really easily.
Absolutely, and it has a nice little 3 defense too, which you said was pretty hard to. I mean, well, at least in the other half, the more generic side, but the 3 defense is pretty strong. Uh,
Mm.
you want to be blocking a little bit more, I think, in Oldhim. Next we have Chilling Ice Vane. This is our first Ranger attack action. An arrow. The yellow one, 4 attack, 3 defense, has Ice Fusion. If it was fused, whenever attack deals damage to a hero this turn, they discard a card unless they pay 1.
Yeah, this has been a really strong card, especially with just Shiver and the Dominate on a stick. And this is one that you can, if you fuse this, send it across the table with Dominate. You're almost always going to take 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, and then you're also going to push maybe a point or 2 of damage across the table too. So, just overall, very strong card.
Yeah, especially in the Lex. Yeah, you wanna be sending arrows like that. You want to make the most out of your arrows. It seems like in Lexi, and especially when you combine it with the Dominate. Next we have Stir the Wildwood, the red one. This is the Elemental Runeblade attack action, 5 attack, 3 defense. Has Earth Fusion. If you have dealt arcane damage to an opposing hero this turn, Stir the Wildwood gains +2, and if it was fused, it gains +2. So this is possibly 9 damage.
Yeah, and this has been a very strong card, and just really what you kind of want to be doing in that power slot of the deck. But when paired with that Bramble Spark again, you can guarantee that arcane damage even without the fuse there, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
get +2 just from that effect. Because these are both Earth Fuse cards, if you do have that one Earth Fuse card, then you're swinging for 9 with one arcane. That's a very good turn.
Oh yeah. Actually, you would be hitting for 10, right? Because you get a little bit of plus off the Bramble, or am I
Oh
mistaken?
yeah, if you fuse with the Bramble, it's even bigger than that for
Oh
sure.
yeah, yeah. Next we got Frazzle. This is an arrow attack. 5 attack, 3 defense. Has lightning fusion. If it was fused, whenever an attack would deal damage this turn, instead it deals that much damage +1. This is the red one.
Yeah, a very strong arrow, especially if you lean a little bit more into the lightning side. Maybe if you have a bunch of those ball lightnings, these will just compound and kind of bounce off of each other and do some really powerful things. So just swing in for 5 dominate with the shiver attack there, and then the fuse target there is going to make this a really strong card.
Absolutely. And then our last card, Thump. The Guardian, straight up Guardian action. attack action. This is the blue one. Costs 4 attack, 3 defense. If its attack is greater than its base attack, it has Dominate. And if it hits a hero, they discard a card.
Yeah, this is especially in red. This has been one of the cards that I look out for when I'm trying to play Oldhim. There's an equipment in the set, Cracker Jacks, where you can basically just destroy it, give your next attack +1, and that's going to turn on the bonus effect for the dominate and discard on hit. So just having that interaction available at any point in the game is going to allow you to pivot, really take the tempo back in your favor, and just pressure a lot of damage on your opponent that they're not going to be able to block well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's that hits hard. I've played a little bit with the Cracker Jacks. I love it for that kind of application too. So yeah, well, kind of fitting that we finished on a Guardian attack. We're going to talk about Oldhim. So first of all, you've played a lot of Bravo, right?
Yes, I have, and that was really my main deck. And I played both the Blitz version and Classic Constructed. And of course, with Blitz, you have the reality that Bravo just does not have a good Ira matchup, and that's always been a challenge. And I found that it's extremely skill intensive, and even as the Guardian player, when you're making all the right plays, it's insanely difficult just to consistently and correctly defend against Kodachis plus whatever additional attack or two that they're going to throw across the table at you.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about Bravo in Classic Constructed?
I think the Bravo is going to be one of the strongest heroes of Tales of Aria. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges of building Oldhim, I always kind of have that looming over my head. Well, how am I going to achieve what Bravo has achieved already? And that was before Terra Sunder, which may be one of the strongest Guardian cards ever printed, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it is very strong, um, uh, and I'm actually waiting for mine to get delivered so I can sneak it into my Oldhim deck. But could you give the listener a little bit of a overview on what Terra Sunder does?
For sure. So this is a card. It's a blue pitch, majestic, defends for 3. It's a guardian action, costs 3 resources to play. It says your next guardian attack this turn gets +1, dominate, and then if it hits a hero, they discard 2 cards. Go again. So the craziest part about this card, and I had certainly had to read it twice when it was spoiled, it's the fact that this is going to impact your next Guardian attack, and that includes your weapon swing.
Oh yeah.
So if you're swinging in with Anathos, which at this point you've already met the criteria to give it +2, you're coming in for 7 with Dominate, and if they can't defend all of that damage, they're going to discard 2 cards. They get to choose which cards they discard, but if you're getting this effect, you're almost certainly stopping anything meaningful that your opponent's going to be able to do on their next turn.
Yeah, it is interesting too because it feels like for a more controlling style hero, it all of a sudden puts your opponent on the back foot for a second there, and then you get to set up for an even bigger turn if possible on your next turn.
Definitely. And this is a card just playing into that control play style there that depending on the matchup in most scenarios, I'm looking to pitch this very early into the game so that this comes up late game when my opponents don't have a lot of their armor left to defend against something like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was a point I was going to bring up. It's like yeah, maybe they'll throw all their armor out there, but even you'd rather be playing this at the end of the game.
Definitely.
So. So I figured, for those of us, or those of you who don't know what he reads, I'm just going to read Oldhim for you guys. He has Essence of Earth and Ice, so he's going to be able to play Earth and Ice cards in his deck, as well as the Elemental Guardian and Guardian cards. And his effect is once per turn, defense reaction, pay 3 resources. If an Earth card is pitched this way, prevent the next 2 damage that would be dealt to Oldhim this turn. If an ice card is pitched this way, the attacking hero puts a card from their hand on top of their deck. Now, that is the first, when I read that, I was like, I'm in love. This is such an awesome effect.
Yeah, it's really an interesting effect, and when I read this too, I was like, oh man, I'm going to be doing this every turn. And it's interesting. It hasn't really played out that way. I'll find myself in most games using this one or two times tops.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do choose to use this ability, it's usually very impactful. It's just you've got to take into the account that it's usually, since it's preventing two, you're better off just blocking with a card that blocks for three.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're using the ice version of this, then that's very handy in just denying your opponent that ability to put a card into arsenal.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now, so there's obviously some going to be some different ways to build an Oldhim deck. So, you can lean heavy on ice, you can lean heavy on earth, or you can kind of get this nice blend of both. And maybe that's the best way. How do you feel about the different ways to build Oldhim?
Yeah, I've really personally leaned into the ice route myself. I do have some earth cards just for the fusion of the oak and old there.
Mm-hmm.
But the Earth variant, really, I find that that one wants to run Anathos more than the Winter's Whale. And that's because a lot of the Earth cards are more expensive resources wise. And then you can lean into cards like Stamp Authority, Blessing of Deliverance, these different effects that actually care about what's in your pitch zone and want to see the cost three there on those cards.
Absolutely, and Oakenold's an interesting card, which like you said, you run the Earth for that, which has Earth and Ice fusion, and it's not and or. You need to have both. Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is going to require both, and the stipulation of that with the legendary card Pulse of Eisenloft, which is both an ice and earth card. If you pitch or you fuse with that card for that effect, you're going to get that fuse off the single card.
And for those of you at home, Oakenold hits for 7, 3 defense, costs 3. But if it's fused, it's going to get +2 dominate, and if it hits a hero, they put 2 random cards from their hand on the bottom of their deck in any order. So, kind of a little bit of a little more of a tear asunder kind of feel to it. I guess you can tear asunder an Oakenold, right?
You can.
I could say
I
goodbye.
personally haven't. Yeah, I haven't pulled that off myself. You need an arsenal for it, but yeah, that would feel pretty bad to have that coming across the table.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I guess you wouldn't really hit all four because you would hit all four because they would defend with one, but you wouldn't see them put all their cards from their hand
Uh
into
huh.
the yeah, which whatever. We can't have everything, I guess, but yeah. So you lean towards the ice side of things, and I'm guessing that you feel that is going to be the best for this current meta.
Yeah, for right now, that's really where I'm leaning. And the deck list I have, which I'm sure we can share with the listeners,
Mm-hmm.
this is the deck that I've been developing. I've been writing a pro series for this on Wraith Times, and the series really just follows my development with the deck over time. And I've been, ever since spoiler season, just putting a ton of time into this. But I'm finding that if I can just keep my life total healthy, if I can keep my armor healthy and not damaged as you approach the longer game, that I can just, on my turn, typically what that looks like, I'm going to defend a bunch of damage, stay healthy, and then the next turn I'm going to pitch a blue ice card, swing back with Winter's Whale for 4 with a frostbite on hit, and over time that's going to get the job done.
Yeah, I really like that idea. Now, I would be lying if in talking to other people in the community when I talk about Oldhim, they say, "Oh, you must like going to time and drawing in a match." How do you feel about that argument?
It's certainly a consideration, and I've played this deck in a number of locals, and it's a very it's probably the grindiest strategy I've played. It's really geared toward that idea of fatiguing your opponent. So in my locals, especially when I know the other player, I found myself sending my hammer across the table before my opponent had even finished drawing out their cards. I'm just trying to play as quickly as and efficiently as possible when I'm on this deck, and one thing I'm certainly considering right now, just because Oldhim is less resource intensive than Bravo,
Hmm.
I've actually shifted the curve of the color pitch there a little more aggressively toward the reds. And I'm looking right now to include Pummel just as a way to better ensure some of those on hit effects and then close out the game and just push more damage through over time when it's relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. Pummel really definitely takes a more aggressive approach. And now I'm looking at the deck list that you shared, and we'll share it with the listener. Some cards of note: Endless Winter. Do you want to talk a little bit about that one? That is his specialization. I can read it. It's cost 4, eight attack, 3 defense. It has Ice Fusion. If it was fused, whenever the defending hero adds a defending card to this chain link, create a Frostbite token under their control. If it hits a hero until the end of their next turn, whenever they activate an ability, create a Frostbite token under their control. I mean, this card hits hard.
Yeah, and this has been one of the strongest cards in the deck, and it's no matter what your opponent does to interact with this card, they're not really having a fun time. This is if I'm on the other side of the table, I really don't want to see this the entire game. And it gets even worse when you compound it with something like Remembrance, shuffle all 3 copies back in your deck, but it's a little more binary than it looks just reading the card. There's a lot of text there, but really the two options that you're going to see when you play this card against your opponent, they're either going to block it out entirely, they're going to block 9 with 3 cards from hand and basically just skip their next turn, or they're not going to block it at all and they're going to take 8. And they're going to try to do something on their turn, but they're going to have a much harder time since they can't really lean on their equipment and abilities to generate value or interact with their cards.
Yeah, this card, and how many copies would you include? You're including all 3 copies in your deck.
Yeah, this is one that I want to max out for sure, and it's one of the highest value attacks. It's really good for that fatigue strategy, and that it's either going to push damage or you're going to rip a bunch of cards out of your opponent's hand when you're just spending 1 card yourself.
Mm-hmm. And another card of note is Awakening, which is one of the few Earth Fusion cards. Which is it pitches for blue. It's it costs 2. It's a non-attack, or no, it's an instant Elemental Guardian instant. Earth Fusion. If you have less life than your opponent, create Seismic Surge tokens equal to the difference. If it was fused, instead create twice that many Seismic Surge tokens. And then on top of that, it has search your deck for a Guardian attack action card with cost less than or equal to the number of Seismic Surge tokens you control. Reveal it, put into your hand, then shuffle your deck. I mean, this card does a lot, man.
It does, and it's really the card that I've centered the deck around. And this is one that it looks pretty simple on paper. You play this card, you're like, oh cool, I get an attack. I basically get to play it for free on my next turn. But I'm finding that there are so many decisions around this card and just how and when to play it that
Mm-hmm.
it's taken a lot of practice just to get that better understanding of what this is trying to do. You'll notice in the deck list that I have a few of the attacks like Mulch Red and Glacial Footsteps Red, that there's only 1 copy of those cards.
Mm-hmm.
And that really allows me to have some value to keep those lines of play open, because those cards are going to do something else depending on how and when I fetch them with Awakening. But it gives more versatility to the card and how you choose to use it. This is really a card we could probably spend the whole episode talking about, but it's it's just deciding when to take some damage to play this card. Usually you'll have 1 resource floating, and you can use that to either activate your Crown of Seeds, draw an extra card for the hand. You can use this to defend with Rampart before you take that damage, but you're always going to kind of have to do that math in your head of when to take the damage, how much further behind your opponent you want to be, and which attack you want to try to tutor up with this.
Absolutely, and so yeah, so you that's why you have the one ofs. I don't know why FabDB isn't showing the numbers on your deck right now. It's just showing which ones you have and showing the amount of sideboard cards, but not the main deck. But it's showing what each card is. But so you have one of Glacial Footsteps and one of Red Mulch, the one of red of each,
hmm
and that's usually what you want to fetch with this. Or, I mean, obviously
So
there's some other good ones.
yeah, usually the main target for this guy is going to be Endless Winter almost
Mm-hmm.
every time, because I'm usually not going to Earth Fuse the Awakening, so that means I need to be down 4 life from my opponent to get Endless Winter,
Gotcha,
and
gotcha.
then I want to have that the Ice Fuse card in hand to get the bonus effect with Endless Winter. But just the sheer capability of just creating these insane tempo swings off of Awakening just can't be overstated. Because you're getting this attack, it goes to your hand, and then next turn you're playing that attack for free. So
Absolutely.
it's just insane.
Yeah, it seems it seems pretty crazy. I haven't gotten to play with it yet. I'm still waiting on my copies in the mail. Man, this card's pretty nuts. But you mentioned Crown of Seeds. Let's talk a little bit about that card. That's the Earth Equipment head. Beautiful art on that, by the way. It has a once per turn instant. Use one resource. Put a face down card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck. Draw a card and prevent the next one damage that would be dealt to your hero this turn.
Yeah, this is really a card that I slept on when it was spoiled. I just looked at it and said, okay, this isn't very good. I'm just going to play Arcanite Skullcap. That's what Guardians do, right?
Yeah.
But when I actually started playing with this card and just understanding what it can do, it's really quite insane. And typically some of the lines you're going to look at here with the fuse attacks, a lot of times you'll be left with a card that you may not want to put in your arsenal. Like a good example of that would be like the Autumn's Touch or the Winter's Grasp. Just these fuse cards that you're pitching them for resources or you're blocking with them, but I'm not going to spend my turn attacking with a Winter's Grasp or 4 with no Frostbite when I can just pitch it to swing my hammer. So what the Crown of Seeds allows you to do, you can put that card into your arsenal, then you can use this effect, cycle it, draw a card, you're preventing a damage, and then you have some resources floating that you can put toward your Rampart of the Ram's Head, or just maybe a defense reaction like Staunch Response. It just frees up a lot of utility. And in the same boat as that, yeah, you may find that you use this on your own turn to try to draw another card, dig a little deeper in your deck, maybe find that fuse target or something more offensive to do on your turn.
And you mentioned the Rampart of the Ram's Head, which, first of all, this is the first, legendary kind of shield we've seen. For the listener, Rampart of the Ram's Head, whenever you defend with Rampart of the Ram's Head, you may pay one resource. If you do, it gains +1 defense until end of turn. It starts with zero defense. How have you felt this card has played out so far?
I've really enjoyed it, and I found that I'm usually pairing this with something like Crown of Seeds to prevent an extra damage, or I'm playing this alongside a defense reaction like Staunch Response. It's not something I'm typically going out of my way to defend with if I'm not going to do one of those other things on my turn, but it's just been a very strong card, and it's also really good around getting around Dominate. One of the interactions here, if you look at the deck list, you'll notice a number of the cards here have 0 defense, the equipment cards. And that is Forged for War, which this one says it's 2 cost, it's a yellow. Go again. While Forged for War is in the arena, equipment you control gain +1 defense. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy Forged for War. And it blocks for 3. So if you have the Forged for War out, the shield, the Rampart of the Ram's Head, it's going to block for free. Same with the Crown of Seeds and the Time Skipper, so you can just guarantee the block 3, you defer that to the next turn, and then it has extra upside with the other equipment you have as well. So that's another card that just really boosts the power of Rampart since it's an equipment, and effectively gives Oldhim another equipment slot just to get extra value from that card.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a cool interaction because it seems like a card, and I'm sure. Did you play it in Bravo much?
So, Forge for War, it was certainly a pick for the chain matchup at the time before they really had refined their deck to go against the fatigue or control strategies ahead of the Las Vegas Calling. I think now, especially with the versions of Bravo that do want to run the Rampart, it's certainly worth more consideration now.
Gotcha. And so another card worth mentioning is Ice Quake, which is an ice action. This is blue. You run the blue one and the red one. Next attack action, or the next attack this turn gains +1. Whenever attack hits a hero this turn, create a Frostbite token under their control. Go again. That's for the blue one, and then the red one is +3, and it costs 1. So you can get your Winter's Whale on this, right?
Yep. So you play this into Winter's Will. It's going to be 7 with 2 frostbites on hit if you have the ice pitch to it. But really, the most disgusting thing that this card does in the deck is you put this on Command and Conquer, and because the Ice Quake only cost 1 resource, Command and Conquer CNC, that's 2 resources.
Oh
You
my
pitch a
god.
single blue, do these cards. You're getting all the Command and Conquer effects. You're giving it +3, so it's coming in for 9. And then to add insult to the injury, they're also going to get a frostbite if this deals damage to them.
Holy smokes. That that sounds like a turn that would just destroy my insides. Oh my god. That's awesome. That is, I mean, so that, if I may throw some compliments your way, that's the kind of deck building I like to see, man. That's awesome. That's such a cool interaction. And basically just a nice little 2-card combo instead of a huge turn. Wow, that, I mean, I don't want to face that. I do want to play it though. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
it's kind of fun to play, but you're also like, oh man, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, definitely. So before we get to some sideboard cards, are there any other cards you feel is worth mentioning? We're obviously playing the Tectonic Plating, which is just an auto including the Guardian stuff, and the Crater Fist. How much Crush do we have in the deck?
Crush is extremely minimal, and this is going to be limited to the 3 copies of Blue Disable,
Mm-hmm.
which are really just there for the block 3 and the 7 power there. And this can be relevant against Prism, which unfortunately is still the weakest match for Oldhim at this time, just as it is with Bravo.
Interesting, interesting. Now, what would you say are the good matchups for Oldhim and the rough matchups for Oldhim, if you were to guess in this meta?
Yeah, right now it's been very strong against almost everything I played with the exception of Prism. And this is the case with Bravo too, and even with 10 plus sideboard cards for Prism, it still is an uphill battle. So that's really where the majority of my tuning is going. And other than that, I think that without changes and maybe sideboarding to pivot to more of a mid-range shell, that
Mm-hmm.
Oldhim players may have trouble against other Oldhims or Bravo and just going to time because that's going to be extremely grindy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's a conversation that's come up with people going into, I guess, like nationals. They feel if they take one draw, they feel like they're kind of out of contention in a way. So it is. So you gotta hope that you're not running into a lot of Oldhim, I guess. Um, but now let's look at these sideboard slots. So I'm seeing 3 Sigil Solace, which is the red
Mhm.
one, cost 0, gain 3 life. What's that for?
Yeah, so Sigil is really in those maybe those hyper aggro matches where you just want to gain life. You're going to have a lot of value here against Katsu,
Mm-hmm.
where they're just going to be swinging in with those Kodachis for 1. Same with Prism, and just they're going to have that death by 1,000 cuts kind of strategy that they're going for. This just allows you to get around that by gaining 3 life versus the inefficiency of trying to defend a 1 attack with a card from hand. So that's really where this is going to shine, and then maybe in some hyper aggro matches where you just want to have a little bit of life sustained toward either the beginning of the game or as it gets close to its end.
Interesting, interesting. And then we have 3 yellow mulch in the sideboard. Is that still in the sideboard?
Yes, so I've been experimenting with snow unders in this slot. I'm finding, and this is purely for Prism as well,
Okay.
but I'm finding that many of the Prisms, and I can't recall the exact name of the attack right now, but they have one of the illusionist attacks with the phantasm that it causes attacks to get -1 when they defend it,
Oh
and
yeah.
just by having the 7 power there, it allows you to trigger that phantasm
Mm-hmm.
even if they play that card. But I have been finding that many of the prisms do take that out in the Guardian or Brute matches anyway. So I've been exploring Snow Under, which is a 3 cost 6 power, so it'll still trigger Phantasm on most of those attacks,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also easier to just play and then do the fuse effect to threaten that Frostbite on hit there.
Definitely. And then next we have Zealous Belting, which is a 2 costed 4 attack, 2 defense generic attack. While there is a card in your pitch zone with attack greater than Zealous Belting, gains go again.
Yep, and this is another one specifically for Prism. You'll notice that that one and then the mulches are all yellow pitch strips, and that's because you want to have these cards on hand if your opponent gets the Great Library of Solana out, just so you can discard them to destroy that. Otherwise, the Prism player is just going to keep drawing 5 card hands, and it just snowballs out of control.
Oh
So
yeah.
this card particularly, Zealous Belting, it's pretty innocent looking, and it really is, but it's really just designed to pressure the Prism a little bit. So typically what this looks like, if they have one of their auras out with Spectra, which Spectra allows you to attack the aura, it'll destroy it, and then basically your attack won't resolve, and typically that means you lose your action point. So with Zealous Belting, then you can attack the Prism player directly, try to break some of those spectral shields that they're just going to keep attacking you with, and then from there swing into the Spectra aura and just try to get a little bit of value and stabilize.
It's interesting. Interesting. Now we have a Majestic in the sideboard slots. Blizzard, the Ice Instant, blue, 0 costed. Target attack loses, can't gain go again unless the attacking hero pays 2.
Yeah, this has been a really cool card, and it's one that I've certainly considered including 3 copies, but it's good against Prism, it's good against Bolton, or some of these other aggressive decks that are really try to leverage these go-wide strategies. And it's going to tax them heavily on their resources and usually prevents at least one attack. So I like to treat this card as a block 3 or 4 because that usually when you play it, that's what it does.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely. I mean, man, it just shuts down. And you know what? If they wanna pay for it, it's not going to really work out in the end for them because they're not going to have the extra cards and resources to get that next attack, right? So
Definitely.
yeah, this card seems to really shut things down. I'm a big fan of Blizzard. Was there any thought of having that in the main deck?
I did think about it. It's just part of the challenge with these new elemental heroes in that you need these cards for the fusion targets, but most of them only defend for 2. So it was a choice not to include that in the main deck, and that you're not always going to be going up against something with Go Again. And with Classic Constructed, at least you're going to be able to do your sideboarding up front. So any
Mm-hmm.
match that you want that card in, you're going to have it,
True.
but otherwise the deck tries to prioritize more defense values wherever possible.
Absolutely. And then we have just Heart of Ice, Null Rune Boots, and Null Rune Gloves as what you have slotted as your sideboard equipment. The Heart of Ice is the new ice equipment, legendary. Um, 1 defense. It has a once per turn action, 1 resource cards, and activated abilities cost opposing heroes an additional 1 this turn. Go again. Has Arcane Barrier 1 and Blade Break.
Yeah, and this card is really one that I only put in 2 matchups, and that's against Katsu and Prism. So Katsu typically, of course, depending on the variant, is going to be trying to play a million flick flacks, just block you out, swing in with Kodachis. If they're running the aggro variant, they might not have as many defense reactions, but it's certainly something that they're going to include. So the goal in this match then is just to make those flick flacks, the sync blows, all those defense reactions cost a resource, because that's really going to mess with their hand and what they're able to do on the next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Against Prism, this is a card that it's essential because of those auras they play. Those are instant speed, and
Uh,
typically they cost 4 resources to play. So they're gonna, and of course, Prism prioritizes a lot of yellows, so they're gonna pitch 2 yellows, play the aura. So what Heart of Ice does, you want to use this, open with this on your turn. The second you get priority after the start of the phase,
mm-hmm.
open with this, and then that Prism player is going to have to decide if they want to play an aura before this effect resolves, and then let you have your turn from there when you have more information and can decide what to do, or if they want to pay extra cards to maybe secure that or just let you have your turn. So this is really a card I try to use each and every turn against Prism just to make their life a little bit more difficult, and then hopefully allow me to have more information before I decide what to do on my turn after I paid that one cost.
Absolutely. Now, the Arcane Barrier. Are you expecting a lot of Rune Blade, a lot of Rune Chants floating around in this new meta?
For Classic Constructed, likely not. And against, well, I mean, yes, I would, but against Briar, Viscerai, maybe even Chain, when we see maybe what that deck's going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the Null Rune boots and gloves come into play.
Yeah.
And Blitz, however, where Kano is much more relevant and a very big threat to many of the decks in the format, that's where this one's really going to shine. But
Gotcha.
otherwise, it's really just for Katsu and Prism at this time.
I see. I see. Well, yeah, cool, cool. Yeah, that pretty much sums up the deck. I mean, it's really awesome, man. I have it built some proxies right now, and I can't wait to get some games in with it. Really enjoying Oldhim in general, and I'm excited to see what he does to the meta. Um, because to me, obviously we've had a Garden, we had Bravo. I feel like he plays out a little bit differently, in my opinion, in this more taxing way. So I think that's awesome. I think the Flesh and Blood competitive scene needed that kind of to offset. It seemed like everything was really aggro for a while. I don't know if you agree.
Definitely, yeah. Chain was a problem in his previous state for sure.
Oh yeah. I've seen some people say, "Oh no, Chain's just as good, if not better now." So I hope not. So I guess we'll see. I guess the next biggest CC tournament is Orlando, right? Unless I'm missing one.
So we'll have nationals there at the Calling DFW. There is going to be a Pro Quest
Oh, true,
on
true.
the Sunday there, and I know there's going to be a lot of really great talent there out on the field. So we might see some surprises with some of the deck building. I know a lot of these teams and some of these really influential players have been keeping a tight lip around what they're brewing right now.
Well, I'll be interested to see what comes out of that, but yeah, man. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for coming on. I think this has been a nice little overview of Oldhim, and obviously you've had some more articles and content out about it, and I'll be sure to link that. But if you don't mind giving everybody your socials and the best way to find you and where to look at your stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just pulling up my Twitter. So that is at Drew J Cordell, DrewJCordell. And you can find my Flesh and Blood content on both Wraith Times and Channel Fireball. I contribute a lot. I write about a lot of different things, not just Guardian. So if you're interested in other decks, maybe concepts, honing up on some of those fundamentals of the game, or just exploring maybe some theoretical approaches to the game and how it plays out, I've got some content like that as well. So I appreciate the chance to come on the show and talk about my content and just Oldhim. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. And something I just started doing at the end of a show is I really love food. So I just want you to tell me one of your favorite dishes, maybe something local to you that you really enjoy, something out of Texas.
Yeah, I'm really into barbecue myself. I've got a smoker and I'll make a lot of that myself. But if I'm going out into town like Dallas, especially, my wife and I, there's this a Vietnamese restaurant called Pho Envy. That's one of our favorites, and I'll get the vermicelli salad bowl out there. So it's like it's got noodles, it's got salad, all these veggies and grilled meats, and I'll just douse that thing in sriracha, and it's a good time, even if I have to have some Tums after.
Oh yeah. Well, listen, man. I am no stranger to Tums. I have a nice big jug of it next to my bed. Uh, it's kind of obviously I like the spicy food as well. I'm glad to hear that you're dousing that thing in sriracha. And now I am especially hungry. But Thanks again for coming on. You can find me at twitter.com/freshbudspod. I have the YouTube. You can just look up Fresh and Buds. I've been posting all the audio of the show. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and I've been doing some of that Craters of Aria sealed tournament. 0-2 right now, not doing too well, but I'll keep posting the results to that on the YouTube. And everybody have a good week and enjoy your weekend.